She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You can't dig here! This is HOA property." But the funny thing was, I was standing on my own mountain, my land, bought and paid for with every cent I had. The day started quiet. The morning air smelled like pine and dust. I was setting up my equipment near the rocky slope when 3 white SUVs rolled up. Out stepped Karen, red sunglasses, clipboard, and that fake smile she used before saying something insane. "We've decided to start leveling this area," she said, pointing at the mountain. "It's an eyesore to the neighborhood." I blinked at her, thinking maybe she was joking. "You're standing on my property line. That ridge doesn't belong to your HOA." She chuckled like I was a child. "Sweetheart, everything in this community falls under our supervision. You should have read the bylaws." "Bylaws? I built this house before the HOA even existed." But before I could argue, a group of workers she'd hired started their bulldozers. The ground shook and rocks tumbled down the slope. "My slope, turn that off," I yelled, running forward. Karen folded her arms and whispered to one of the workers, "If he interferes, call the cops. Say he's trespassing." That one word, trespassing, hit me hard. I'd fought years for this land. Every inch of it. And now she was trying to erase my ownership like it meant nothing. So I pulled out my phone and opened the live camera feed, the one mounted high up the ridge. Karen didn't know it yet, but she had just started a war she couldn't win. Because what she didn't know was, I built this mountain myself. Literally. And I had every permit, deed, and recording ready to bury her HOA dreams for good. But she kept pushing. "Either you stop this nonsense or we'll have you removed by force," she shouted. I just smiled quietly. "Try me." She didn't realize yet, the moment she ordered those machines to dig, she broke more than just rocks. She broke the law, and that was the first mistake she was going to regret. Karen wasn't bluffing this time. Within an hour, 2 men showed up in dark uniforms with shiny badges clipped to their belts. They looked official, almost too official. One of them barked, "Sir, we received a report of trespassing and property damage. Step away from the machinery." Karen stood behind them with her arms crossed, grinning like she had already won. "That's him," she said. "He's been digging illegally on HOA land." I didn't move. "You're both making a mistake," I said calmly. "This land belongs to me. I have the deeds right inside the house." One of the so-called officers stepped closer. "We'll see about that." "Hand over your ID." His tone was off. Too aggressive, too rehearsed. Real cops don't talk like that. My gut told me something was wrong, and I'd learned a long time ago to trust my instincts. So instead of arguing, I started recording. My camera caught the badges, their plates, and Karen whispering to them. The more they talked, the clearer it got. These weren't real cops. Their badges didn't even match the local county logo. I asked, "Which department are you from?" The taller one snapped, "You don't need to know that." That was it. I smiled slightly and said, "Actually, I do, because I trained with your department for 8 years. Karen's face froze. "Wait, what?" I nodded slowly. "I'm a retired deputy, and you just brought 2 impersonators onto my property." Her fake confidence cracked. She stepped back, trying to act like she didn't know them. I thought they were real officers. "They said they were from the county." I took a few steps forward, my camera still rolling. "You paid them to come here, didn't you?" "To scare me off my land?" Karen's voice trembled. "No, I just wanted the project to move forward." But it was too late. The sound of real sirens echoed up the mountain road. Karen looked terrified now. "Oh my God. You called them?" I didn't have to. The live feed I set up earlier automatically triggered an alert when unauthorized vehicles entered the property line. It notified the sheriff's department directly, and as the real police cruisers pulled up, one of the fake cops dropped his badge and tried to run. Karen just stood there, speechless, watching the mess she created turn against her. What she didn't know was, this was only the beginning. The real deputies questioned everyone on site. The fake cops were handcuffed within minutes, and Karen tried to hide behind her clipboard like that could erase what just happened. She kept mumbling, "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know they weren't real officers." But her voice was shaking. She knew exactly what she'd done. One of the deputies walked over to me. "Sir, we confirm this land is registered under your name. You want to press charges for trespassing and impersonation." I looked at Karen, her face pale, eyes darting between the bulldozers and the handcuffed men. I almost felt bad, almost. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to know why she's digging here." Karen's jaw tightened. You wouldn't understand. It's for the community. The community? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the HOA that formed 6 months after I built here? She didn't answer, so I walked up to one of the construction workers. Who hired you? The man hesitated, then said quietly, Her. She said we were clearing ground for an expansion, a luxury clubhouse for HOA members. She gave us a permit copy. He paused, but now I'm starting to think it was fake. I stared at Karen. You were planning to build your clubhouse on my land? She clenched her jaw. This ridge doesn't belong to you anymore. The HOA voted on it. That line made the deputy chuckle. Ma'am, an HOA can't vote away private property. You've crossed a line here, Karen snapped. You don't understand. The investors already paid. If this project stops, I lose everything. Her voice broke mid-sentence. That's when I realized, and this wasn't just greed. It was desperation. She'd promised something she didn't own, and now the entire HOA was breathing down her neck. I sighed, pulling out a small black folder from my truck. Inside were copies of my land deeds, boundary maps, and even the footage of when she first trespassed. I handed it to the deputy. He whistled softly. Looks like we've got ourselves a full case here. Karen glared at me, eyes full of panic. You're making a big mistake. You think you've won? You have no idea who's backing me. I tilted my head slightly. Then maybe you should tell me. Who exactly is backing you, Karen? She didn't answer. She just turned away, whispering something into her phone before storming off toward her SUV. Whatever she said on that call, it changed everything, because that night, something happened up on that mountain that made me realize this fight was far from over. That night, I heard engines roaring up the dirt road again, not just one or two, but a whole convoy. Headlights swept across the trees like searchlights. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching dust swirl under the moonlight. Then I saw her, Karen, stepping out of a black SUV, flanked by 3 men in suits. No HOA badges this time. These guys were clean-cut, confident, the kind who didn't blink much. One of them carried a metal case. Karen looked different now, not the loud, bossy neighbor. She looked scared but determined, like someone who'd bet everything on one last move. I called out, You really came back this soon? She straightened her blazer. We're not done here. This land is being reclassified by the county under community development. You'll be forced to sell. I almost laughed. Reclassified? Overnight? That's not how zoning works, Karen. The man beside her stepped forward. We're from Harborstone Development Group. We've acquired rights from the HOA to begin construction immediately. This mountain is valuable real estate. I looked at him carefully. You mean my mountain? He smirked. For now, I felt my stomach tighten. Harborstone. I'd heard of them. They were notorious for using legal loopholes, pressuring small owners until they gave up. Karen spoke softly now, almost pleading. Just take the offer, please. You'll get paid double market value. No lawsuits. Everyone wins. I stared at her for a long second. You already tried fake cops, fake permits, and now fake rezoning. You really think money will fix this? The man opened his case, pulled out a contract, and slid it onto the hood of his SUV. Sign it tonight and we walk away. I didn't even look at the paper. You should walk away anyway, I said quietly, before that hill behind you gives out. They turned, confused, just as a loud crack echoed through the valley. The bulldozers they'd left up there earlier had loosened half the slope. Tons of loose rock began to slide, groaning under their feet. Karen screamed as dust exploded around them, the men diving for cover while the SUV's alarms went off in the chaos. When the rumble finally stopped, half the road was buried. No one was hurt. But the brand new luxury SUV? Crushed under a pile of their own greed. Karen coughed through the dust, eyes wide with disbelief. You planned this. I shook my head slowly. No, Karen, you did. You shouldn't have dug into a mountain you didn't understand. One of the developers got up, brushing dirt off his suit, glaring at me. You think this is over? You just buried $1 million deal. I smiled faintly. Then dig it back up. They left that night silent and furious. But as their tail lights disappeared, I noticed something strange. A small drone hovering above my cabin, its red light blinking. Someone was watching, and I had a feeling this wasn't just about land anymore. The next morning, I found the drone lying in the bushes behind my cabin, half broken, still humming quietly. Someone must have lost control of it during the rock slide. I picked it up, wiped off the dirt, and noticed a small logo under the battery. Harborstone Security Division. So they weren't just developers. They had their own surveillance team. I took it inside and hooked it up to my laptop. The video feed popped open and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were recordings, hours of them, showing my property from every angle. But it wasn't just my land they were watching. They had footage of underground drilling, maps with glowing red zones marked extraction points, and notes like Phase 1, evict homeowner, begin excavation. Karen's voice came through one of the clips. Once he's gone, we can start mining the lower ridge. The HOA will sign whatever I put in front of them. They'll never know what's underneath. I froze. Mining? That mountain wasn't just a pretty view. It was sitting on a bed of mineral deposits. That's why they wanted it so badly. I leaned back in my chair, realizing this wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was a full-blown corporate land grab. Just then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. Silence. Then a man's voice said, "You shouldn't have opened that drone." Before I could respond, the call disconnected. I stepped outside, scanning the tree line. For the first time since this started, I actually felt uneasy. Someone was out there, watching. That night, I drove down to the county office with the footage. The clerk at the desk looked nervous as I explained. This drone belongs to Harborstone. They're planning illegal mining on protected land. She frowned. That's impossible. Those mountains are under federal environmental protection. No company has permission to dig there. Then check again, I said, sliding the USB drive toward her. She hesitated, then plugged it in. A few minutes later, she looked up, pale as paper. These permits? They're all forged, and your signature's on some of them. My stomach turned. My signature? Yes, she whispered. They filed fake ownership transfers. According to county records, you already sold your land 3 weeks ago. I felt the room spin. They'd forged everything. The deeds, the signatures, the permits. They'd already set the trap before I even realized it. Karen wasn't acting alone. Harborstone had used her HOA as a front to take the land from under me. But what they didn't know was, I had proof they'd just committed a federal crime, and I knew exactly who to call next. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my porch watching the wind push dust off the ridge, thinking about how fast everything had spiraled. They forged my signature. They tried to erase me from my own land. That wasn't just greed anymore, that was war. I opened an old wooden box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were my badges, service medals, and a list of numbers I'd kept for emergencies. Real people. People who didn't work for politics or money, just truth. I dialed the first number. "It's me," I said when the voice answered. "I've got a forged land case tied to Harborstone Development. They're using an HOA as a front. I've got video, voice logs, and falsified county paperwork." There was a pause. Then the man on the other end said quietly, "We've heard of them. Send everything to the Federal Property Crimes Unit. We'll take it from there." By sunrise, I had already uploaded the entire drone footage, voice files, and every copy of my real deed. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted justice, and I was going to do it legally, cleanly, and publicly. Around noon, Karen showed up again. She didn't come with SUVs this time. She came alone, looking exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. She stood at the edge of my driveway. "I didn't know about the mining," she said quietly. "They lied to me too." I didn't respond. She took a shaky breath. "They promised to clear my debts, give me a cut from the deal. I thought it was just a land merger. I didn't know they were forging papers." I finally looked up. "You signed off on fake cops, Karen. You let people dig into someone's home. You knew it was wrong." Tears filled her eyes. "I made a mistake. But they're not done. They said if I talk, they'll destroy everything I own." Before I could say anything, a black drone buzzed overhead. Newer, sleeker. Karen flinched, then looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "They're watching," she whispered. I stepped closer, then let them watch, because by then the trap was already set. My live security feed wasn't just recording anymore, and it was streaming. Straight to the sheriff's office, the county council, and the Federal Investigation Unit. Every word she said, every drone that hovered above us, all of it was being saved, logged and tracked. Karen looked at me in disbelief. "You knew this would happen." I nodded slowly. "I built this mountain with my own hands. Did you really think I'd let anyone take it that easily? Just then my phone buzzed again. A message from the federal contact. Got it. Warrant in progress. Sit tight. I looked back at Karen. You might want to start talking before they arrive. And for the first time, she didn't argue. She just nodded, defeated, as the sound of sirens started to echo up the road once again. Only this time, they were coming for her. By the time the sun dipped behind the ridge, the HOA office looked like a crime scene. Black SUVs lined the street, agents in windbreakers moving in and out of the building with boxes of files. Karen sat on the curb, hands trembling, her clipboard lying in the dirt beside her. I stood across the street, watching the chaos unfold. For years, that HOA office had been her kingdom, the place where she barked orders, handed out fines, and bullied neighbors into silence. Now she couldn't even look up. One of the agents, a tall man with a clean beard and calm voice, walked over to me. You're the property owner, right? The one who filed the footage? Yeah, I said quietly. What did you find? He handed me a printed sheet. Harborstone Development wasn't just after your mountain. They've been laundering money through fake HOA projects all over the county. Over 40 properties have forged deeds tied to their shell companies. I stared at the paper, shaking my head. 40? He nodded. Yours just happened to be the one they couldn't bury. Across the lot, Karen was surrounded by 2 agents. I could hear fragments of her voice, not a scared, breaking. I didn't know about the mining. They said it was community funding. I just needed help. The agent sighed. She's cooperating. Turns out she was the bait. They used her HOA to make everything look legitimate. I glanced at her. She looked smaller now, fragile. Nothing like the woman who once screamed orders at bulldozer drivers. What happens to her? I asked. She'll face charges, the agent said. But she might avoid prison if she helps us expose the rest. I looked back toward my truck, exhaling slowly. The fight that started with a fake notice on my door had turned into a federal takedown. But just as I turned to leave, another agent hurried over with a tablet. Sir, you need to see this. On the screen was live drone footage, the same ridge behind my property. A black van was speeding down the dirt road, heading straight for the old quarry entrance near the base of the mountain. The agent muttered, That's Harborstone's logistics chief. They're trying to destroy evidence before we seize it. I didn't think twice. That tunnel runs right under the HOA construction site, I said. If they blow it, the whole slope could collapse. The agent looked at me, eyes wide. How do you know that? I grabbed my keys. Because I built the reinforcement tunnels myself, and I know exactly where they'll start the blast. He reached out to stop me. Sir, you can't go down there, but I was already moving, because this wasn't just about justice anymore. If they set off that charge, they wouldn't just erase the evidence, they'd bury the truth forever. And I wasn't going to let that happen. The road down to the quarry twisted like a scar through the mountain. My tires kicked up dust as I sped toward the old tunnel, headlights cutting through the dark. Every instinct I'd ever learned as a deputy, a builder, a man protecting what's his, and it all came flooding back. When I reached the lower slope, I saw the black van, back doors open, 2 men hauling heavy crates toward the tunnel entrance. I could smell the chemical burn of explosives from where I stood. I yelled, Step away from those charges. They froze for a second, then bolted. One jumped into the van while the other tried to set off a detonator. I ran forward, grabbing the nearest rock and hurling it. It hit the ground beside him, breaking his focus long enough for me to tackle him to the dirt. He struggled, gasping, You don't get it. They'll bury all of us. Before I could answer, blue and red lights flashed down the slope. The agents had arrived, surrounding the site in seconds. The man under me gave up, hands in the air. The one in the van tried to drive off, but the road gave out halfway down, swallowed by the same loose soil they'd weakened days earlier. The van tipped, rolled once, and slammed to a stop against a boulder. The agent I'd spoken to earlier ran over, shouting, The charges! Are they live? I pointed at the detonator still lying near the tunnel. Not anymore. He nodded, relief flooding his face. You just saved half this valley. We both looked up at the mountain, quiet now except for the faint whistle of wind through the trees. The land that had been fought over, dug into, forged, and nearly stolen, still stood solid. My land. By morning, the headlines hit every local channel. Harborstone Development and HOA leaders arrested in massive land fraud investigation. Karen's mugshot was everywhere. But what caught people most was the footage. Her confessions streamed live from my cameras, the same ones she once mocked. A week later, I found her waiting near my fence line, released on bail. She didn't say a word at first, just looked at the mountain with tears in her eyes. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "All for something that was never mine." I nodded slowly. "You wanted to own something you never built. I wanted to protect something I did. That's the difference." She looked at me one last time before walking away down the dirt road. Smaller, quieter, maybe finally understanding the weight of what she'd done. As for me, I stood there watching the sun rise over the ridge. The light caught the fresh cracks in the rock, no scars, but honest ones. Proof of what it took to stand your ground. And as I sipped my coffee, I couldn't help but smile. "They dug into my mountain," I said under my breath. "And the only thing they found was karma. The end."